Anyways, you know how many people I meet and they're like, oh, from Hollywood, California? I'm like, no, Hollywood, Florida, but it counts.
Right.
Sometimes I'm
Listen,
just going to be
there's
like,
a
yeah,
lot of people from California coming here now because it's a little bit of a California vibe in the lakes with the older homes and the charm.
correct. That's definitely true. Okay, but let's start out with a formal introduction. So, I'm Nochum. Welcome to the Real Pod. I'm McQueen, in charge of the Mager McQueen group. Correct?
I am.
Okay, the legend. We've been doing real estate together, I would say, for about 3 years now.
Yeah. Since right when the pandemic, I think, started, right?
Yeah.
That's when you came around.
That's when I came around and started making waves in the Hollywood neighborhood.
You did. You were knocking down the doors.
Knocking down the doors. That's funny. That reminds me of our listing story, which we'll get to. But so Anne, obviously you've been in the business, I think, what, 25 years now?
No, 20. 20 this year.
Okay. Already. 20th anniversary. So you've got lots to say. We have lots to debunk. And I want to hear some stories and some interesting stuff, some crazy stuff that we wouldn't get from someone that's 3 years in the business. And it's interesting how the market here, there's a few people that see each other every week. Let's put it that way.
Right.
And I think we all know who that is. It's myself, you, and one other broker that we kind of cross paths with every other week. So in some way it's a smaller market, and the other way it's like super competitive. The lakes, specifically Hollywood in general, but you specialize mainly in the lakes, Hollywood, South Florida. Where do you specialize?
It's easy for me to specialize in Hollywood Lakes since I live here, just like you, right? And mine and Jeff's office with the Mager McQueen group, we have our own campus office downtown Hollywood. So Hollywood is easy, right? It's around the corner. We live here, we work here, but we go as far as way down south, and we just closed on a deal even in Juno Beach.
Wow.
So money is money. So if you have to travel a little bit, right? That's what you got to do.
I took a listing. I think I said this in a podcast before. I took a listing out in Fort Myers, actually. So
wow.
Believe it or not, my client called me. He asked me to list the property. We had a really pleasant transaction in the past. And he was like, I want you to list it. I was like, look, I'll put it on a lockbox.
I was just going to say.
I'll put it on a lockbox and I'll go out a few times, but I'm not really going to do more than that. I just want to be fully transparent. I'm not going to be at the showings.
Right.
Anyways, 30 days later, we closed. And it was a smooth transaction. I drove there twice. It was about 8 hours at a time.
Yeah. Those are usually the easiest ones. The ones that you think, oh, wow, should I really do this? And they turn out to be easy breezy.
And it was actually very enjoyable. We took a road trip. I actually took it with our producer, Yisrael. Took a road trip down to Fort Myers. We spent the first day I went there. That was for listing photos and just like familiar myself, like get to know the property. And then we went to the mall, and then whatever. We had a nice time.
Right. You went to the mall.
Nice yeah, they have a nice, what's it called?
An outlet.
Yes, they have a nice outlet mall, like 5 minutes from the house.
Yes, they do.
I was like, we're here anyways. Let's see what there is.
Right.
Bought some stuff for my wife, and yeah, it's nice.
Also, husband of the year.
besides for realtor. So that's funny. I just saw that you got the listing on Tyler.
I did. I'm sorry.
I'm not sure what the address was again.
1227.
1220. You have the listing, so you have to remember it.
Yes.
I didn't get it. I don't even remember it.
You didn't get it. That's why you're like, forget it.
Yeah, pretty much. So I saw that come out, and my client that I showed to when it was off market after I door knocked that house, I showed it to him about 1.5 years ago, and we're in contract on a different house in Washington. I told you that, 1131 Washington.
Yes.
So we're in contract on that for the client that saw the Tyler Street house. So he texted me. He was like, oh, 1227 Tyler just got listed. I'm like, yeah, I almost got the listing, but I ain't got it.
So close.
So close. And I wanted to hear from him why I didn't get it. Obviously, it's hard for me to beat 20 years, for sure, 17 years, because if I'm 3 years in, 17 years of experience and knowing the market, what do you think made you get the listing over me? Or,
to be honest with you, if I go to the listing, if I get the call for the listing,
you're getting it.
I'm getting it. That's just how it is. And that's not me being full of myself. That's just how it is. Now, here's the thing. The task is to get the call, right? That's
correct.
Yeah, I want to get the call. I think I'm very much a straight shooter at the listing appointments. I don't BS around. I don't tell necessarily the seller what they want to hear. And I'm not saying that you did that, by no means. I know, I mean, he bought the house from me, so I already had a little bit of an upper
I didn't
hand
know that.
on you.
You didn't tell me that.
Yes. So, but I think people appreciate, listen, every seller, I think most of the time they have the Taj Mahal compared to whatever else has sold. But I think that when I lay down the facts for them and say, listen, yes, you have X, Y, and Z, but this is really what you're competing with, and this is where we need to be at. And I don't really budge much off of that. I'm very much like, I'm trying to get you as much money as possible in your pocket, but this is reality. We'd rather have this conversation today than 6 months from now, because you're not going to be happy with me. So,
right. Okay, I figured it would be something like that. I did not know that you sold him the house, so that obviously
in a
put me
foreclosure,
behind the 8 ball.
Yes. But I have to tell you, he was, he had nothing but great things to say about you. And when he told me that he was interviewing a couple of agents, I did tell him, and I think I told you this, that I said to him, listen, if you're not going with me, then this is who you got to go with.
Right.
And he asked me, like, I'm so surprised that you would say that. And I'm like, hey, we have a relationship. You got to look out for each other in this business. So,
and I think I told him verbatim of what you told him. I told him something along the lines. I was like, if you don't go with me, then definitely Anne is your best bet. She's been doing it for, I think I said 25 years. She's been doing it for 25 years.
Me, dude.
Well, I figured you started when you were 15.
Yeah. Mm-hmm.
Who knows?
Yes.
15 plus 25. I mean, that's pretty good. That's pretty good, right?
That's good. That's good.
My toes there. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, that it's always fun to do that. And I remember it was actually our first deal that we did together was on Madison Street here in Hollywood. And that was a crazy deal. That was like such a roller coaster with the tenants and the showing. I remember you told me, which is going to lead me into my next thing. I remember you told me when I was showing the property to you, I was like, it's rough in there. I'm just warning you. And you're like, I've seen worse.
Oh, yeah.
What have you seen that's worse? Because this was for anyone that's listening, this house was a 4-bedroom home with about 10 and a half people and 4 dogs living there. 3 beds in each room.
Zombies.
People say it was a nightmare. It was a nightmare all around.
It was pretty bad.
It was pretty bad. But you said yet you've still seen worse. So I'm curious, what have you seen worse at listing appointments, showings, something crazy?
I mean, listen, we had properties, Jeff and I, for numerous properties that had, was like back when the market was really bad, and we would have like 50 listings at a time, and they would sit for a while. I mean, this is like when the whole market crashed, and there would be squatters in there. And I've had people knock me over as I've opened up the door, like to run out of the house. And we would have cops come, and they would take pepper spray and spray in the house, so to deter the squatters from like coming back. But of course that lasted for like a couple of days, and then they would be, back again. And I mean, I've had, I've actually also had a dead person. So, yeah.
That's rough. Like, how do you go about that? Like, are you calling the police? Are you calling your broker?
Yes.
You're the broker,
yes.
But like.
Yes, no, yeah, you have to. And, we even had one not so long ago where a person had been dead in the property for 3 months before anybody found out. So the smell in there was, oof.
Oh my goodness.
I know, it was really, it was bad.
That's wild. And I'm sure that's just a drop into the bucket of the many stories. In my 3 years, I could say that I've had stories, but at the same time, there's a story that comes to mind. It's not really appropriate to share, but it was actually the same seller's other house on 15th Terrace. Same seller. Also,
Oh, that's right. He had two. I forgot about that. Yes. And you did tell me that one was almost worse.
that one was probably worse. The back tenant had raging cancer, and
Oh,
he
that's
had a
awful.
massive pit bull that was like his safety buddy.
Mhm.
But at the same time, every time we came, the pit bull was like jumping on us, and it was strong. It knocked you over very easily, like strong. It would just scare every buyer. Like, I'm surprised we got it sold, but we were able to.
A lot of buyers are petrified of dogs, like even little dogs. I've had so many times when I'm like, hey, there's just a little dog in here. It's friendly. And people are like, no, I don't want to go in.
Yeah. But most sellers are respectful of that, and they'll put them away.
Yeah, absolutely. And I had a dog, so like I can take them.
Right. You'll hold them. Worst
I
case.
did open the door one time to a house where somebody had told me there was no dogs. And it was on Washington Street, out of all street, which is, for those people that don't know, that's one of the busier streets here. And two dogs went running out. Like as soon as I opened the door, two dogs took off. And me in high heels and a skirt I was running down the Washington Street for these dogs. Yeah.
That's wild.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, all this kind of stuff happens when either we're not prepared or we're just misinformed, and the sellers say one thing and it's totally not the case. It's totally not the case. So what's interesting to me is, and we discussed it last week in the commercial space, how do you feel the market's doing? Where do you think it's going to go? I've seen numerous sources saying that Florida is maintaining their prices really well, especially in the luxury scene. And then there's Joe Schmoes on TikTok and Instagram saying that no, the market in Florida, and I've seen specifically like people looking on Zillow at the lakes, and I'm like, bro, I live here, and I remember someone was pointing out to Liz Hogan's listing,
right?
That was listed at 5.5, and this guy was like, I promise you, this house will never sell. Liz texted me like 2 days before that it's under contract. So I commented, and I never usually comment, but I commented. Because he was like ripping the market apart. He was like, this house is going to sell for $3 million.
Was it an agent or it was just like somebody?
They're just
random?
Someone, probably some sort of investor that they know best.
Of course.
They know best.
Yes.
Way better than you, way better than me, and better than 10 other real estate professionals combined.
Right.
But they knew best, and they knew that Liz Hogan's deal is going to sell at $3 million. So I replied in the comments, I'm like, it's actually pending at over $5 million. But like the word's going around, high interest rate, low interest rates. We're at a pretty good month low right now. I think hovering around 7.5% as of today, which is November 8th. How do you feel the market in general? The market health? Is this a slower season? Is it a higher season? Tell us a little bit of market thoughts.
I think for young buyers, the interest rates are like, oh wow, it's at 7.5, and so it's hard for them they're locked in. Maybe they bought their first home and now they're starting to have kids and they want to kind of, move up and they feel like, oh, I can't do a 4% jump in interest rates. For my age people, I mean, when we bought our first homes, of course, the prices were much less, but we were paying 13% interest rate. So still at 7.5, we're not like, oh my gosh, it's so bad.
Correct.
That being said, I think that you're not seeing as much inventory on the market because people are kind of locked in. And so that's what's stabilizing the prices. The homes that are sitting there, though, are usually the ones that are overpriced, thinking what they could have gotten in 2022.
And I think for some people or even like, for example, this TikTok that I'm thinking about, he says in his TikTok, he was like, look how many listings are up for sale in Hollywood Lakes. And okay, there are a nice amount of listings up right now. When you go on the MLS and Zillow, you will see a really nice amount. However, we both know when you filter it out and when you have a client that's looking for something ready and able, willing, $1 million, all cash, let's say, nothing to be found.
No.
Nothing to be found because those aren't real listings. There was a listing on Funston, I remember, 1,600 square feet listed at $2.1 million. So for the person on TikTok, that's a listing.
Yeah.
For me and you, that's not a listing. That should be illegal. It's not a matter of how many bubbles do you see on Zillow or how many homes are there up. It's how's the quality of the inventory.
Yeah. I mean, really, what I try to go by is like what's been pending in 30 days, right? That's how I gauge the market right now, like what's pending. But I mean, we just put a different house on the market, and it had been on the market with somebody else before us, and for different reasons, both of them fell through because the buyer was looking to do something that couldn't be done with the property necessarily. But we put it under contract twice within the first 2 weeks on the market. And so I think that the buyers are out there for sure. But you have to be priced right. And agents have to spend some money on marketing. I think that's where most agents fail their clients. They're more about promoting themselves more so than promoting the listings. Yes. People don't want to spend the money, but I tell all our agents that you really, really, especially when you're starting out too, you really need to put some heavy money. And you and I talked about that. And I said that to you. Lunch. Yes. And I said to you, you got to put money aside for marketing all the time.
100%. And that as you were saying that came to me, and I wanted to ask you, because your listing to sale ratio is very high. I don't know it. You could tell me what it is, but
I wouldn't know it either.
it's probably, I'm comfortable to say probably 96, 7%. You're almost every listing you take, you sell within a reasonable time.
Yeah.
Besides for a few different phenomenons that it's not on you, it's just the house.
Right.
But is that success attributed to doing all that marketing and listing? And if so, how do you market your listings?
I think it is. I think it's a combination. I'm very. I want the homes to look a certain way in the pictures, so I do take some time to make sure that takes place. I'm very controlling of the listing, so to speak, when it goes out, how we market it. So we do quite a bit of social media. We do some targeting also with our campaigns, with our marketing campaigns. We do. I mean, we have a nice. I'm with Compass, as you know, and we do have an excellent marketing team behind us, and so everybody should utilize that if they're with Compass, and we really do. And I think that is very helpful for our listings. And I think we get a lot of, believe it or not, sight unseen buyers that buy our properties. And it's, of course, a lot has to do with, I spend hours on the description before it hits the market and on the pictures.
Wow.
And it's not rocket science what we do. We move clients from one house to another, right? We answer the phone and we make sure we sell.
Correct. So that's definitely, I guess that's where a lot of people in this market, especially new agents, that I see as well. Let's say someone got into business 2019. Let's just say 2019, I believe, was a good market.
Yes.
I think it was a healthy, but it was a good market. Better, right. I think, than in the market that we are right now at this moment, as of November 8th.
Yeah, I agree with you.
So from 2019, let's say an agent that got into business in 2019 and then got in at 20, and then that rolled into 2020. In 2020, what did you have to do? You had to take crappy pictures. You had to do a terrible listing description, but all you had to do was put it on Zillow and it sold.
I agree with you, but not during, you have to remember during March. Yes, during March till like September.
That's when a lot of my friends sweeped up some great deals.
Yeah, because then it was like, oh my, people were unloading their, like fearing that everything was going to crash and happen. So the prices were not nearly what they are today, but it was also much slower.
Correct.
Yeah.
At the same time, let's say the end of 2020 going into 2021, the worse the pictures on Zillow, the higher the bidding war was.
I know.
So it's interesting how that's just the real estate. That's the cycles. Like There's ups, there's downs. I believe
Yes,
overall,
it's a roller coaster.
I believe overall, and every deal is a roller coaster. Can we talk
Yes.
about that?
Yes, we can. But remember that deal we just did? You were like, oh my God, this is never going to close. And I was like, oh, we're closing it. Like I closed my deals.
I know, and it's amazing.
You didn't think it was going to happen.
Well, I wasn't so involved. Bonnie was a little bit more
Yes,
involved in the
yes.
day to day. Again,
Yes.
I did my job, which was to deal with
Yes, you did.
the squatters and the dogs and the cats. But overall, so what do you say? And this is going to be this may be very controversial, but you know what? Bad publicity isn't, and there's no bad publicity. No such thing as bad publicity.
All right,
I think that's
we're
the word.
going there?
We're going there.
Yeah.
Is Florida in a housing bubble, and is Florida going to crash? Which is a loaded question.
Yeah, but there are some big companies that are moving here, right? And I'm not saying, I'm talking to South Florida, there are big financial companies moving. Now Jeff Bezos is moving. Like, I think that Florida is, yes. I think the prices in Miami are just outrageous at the moment. Yes. Well, do I think that could for sure stabilize? But I don't know how we see a crash as long as people are moving here like they are. I don't foresee per se a crash, but I think any market corrects itself, right? Any market, and so does the real estate market. So it will correct itself and stabilize, but I don't think we're at a crash. And usually you'll see it out west more so than east, because we're very limited east, right?
We're a stone throw away from the lake, the beach, everything.
Right. But there's also limited housing.
Right.
So, it's not like out west where, you have a community
with
and
acres.
all that. Yes. And they're on 3,000 square foot lots, and there's just one after the other. I mean, I think that will correct itself. And I think it is already more so than maybe east.
I went to a listing that I was actually extremely shocked at. I went to a listing yesterday. Almost 5,000 square feet, 5-bedroom, 5-bathroom. Needs updates. House in great condition, but needs updates. And they're listing it. It was listed at $239 a foot. And this was 10 steps away from the Intercoastal in Pompano.
Wow.
Yeah, it's a good deal.
That's a great deal.
I'll send it to you
That's
after.
a great deal.
Yeah.
We're taking one now on the water in Wilton Manors.
Oh, nice.
Mm-hmm.
Okay, yeah. Wilton Manors is really nice, and I think Wilton Manors is a pretty stable market for different reasons. But
Right.
overall, I think that is. I actually was thinking about it the other day, specifically in Hollywood, and I'm not covering the entire Florida, and obviously both of us are not. We're mainly South Florida. We're talking about. Let's just say Hollywood as a whole. I'm seeing like certain homes go up on the market. And I'm thinking 10 months ago or a year ago, this home would have been up for sale at 2.5.
Right.
Now it's on the market for 2.2.
Mm-hmm.
So in some way, the market has softened and it's in the middle of the correction. People may not realize it, but that's my opinion. It could be I'm way off here, but do you agree with that? Like,
No,
there are homes?
Yeah, I agree with you. I said the exact same thing, right? Like, it's going to correct itself, and it has already somewhat. What we're missing, if we're going to talk in Hollywood, the families that are moving in are looking for a little more square footage than the normal smaller ranch style, 1,800 square feet. They want more, 2,500 square feet to 3,000. And to get that, there's hardly any on the market now. So those are selling a little bit at a higher price still, right? Would you agree?
Correct.
Yes. And
you
then
see anything that's above 2,500 square feet is up for sale at anywhere from 1.4 to 1.7.
Right.
But that is the sweet spot. I remember the listing that I showed on Adams and 9th or Adams and 10th. That was 3,000 square feet.
Yes.
That was a perfect house. Listed at you closed at 1.42.
Yes.
Something along those lines. And I remember that's a perfect house.
Yes.
But it doesn't exist now.
No.
So It's a
Your
wild.
clients were like, because remember, I gave you like a
They're still
first
looking.
shot.
They're still
Oh,
looking.
Lord.
They're still looking.
So, well,
Very sad, but it is what it is. This is the name of the game. This is the
Yes.
nature of the business.
for sure. But you keep knocking on the doors.
Knocking on the doors. We actually spoke about you in our podcast last 2 weeks ago, and we were talking
Should I be
about
worried?
cold calling. No, we were talking about cold calling.
Okay.
And I remember you told me once that you went to a seminar and they forced you to cold call and you closed 3 listings. And then after that, you were like, I will never do this again.
It's true. You had to wear like a pig's hat if you did not get like at least like
5 appointments.
5 appointments, like in person, right? So it was like terrible pressure. And I was a nervous wreck, and I hate my voice, and I don't like talking on the phone also because English is not my first language. And I was all worked up about it. And I made 5 cold calls, and I got 5 appointments. And we were all sitting in one room doing this. And I kid you not, people were beside themselves. But I never cold call again. I refuse. I have an agent that works for me, Cecilia. She cold calls every day for 2 hours.
You told me that
Relentless.
there's definitely risk with that as well.
Yes. Ooh. Yes.
There's definitely
Yes.
risk. Does she do FISBOs and expireds like
Yes.
9 a.m. boom ringing?
She does. I don't think she does them in the morning. I think she does them in the afternoon.
Interesting.
But
I think that's a better strategy.
Yeah.
Because 9 a.m. a FISBO and expired are ringing off the hook.
Yes. All the expired for sure.
Yeah.
But I mean, I knocked on doors. I would rather knock on a door than cold call for sure. 100%.
I'm probably the same.
Yeah.
I do not like cold calling. It's funny because our first person that we had, Noah, he has done like 13 deals. 12 out of 13 were from cold calls. He's amazing at it. He loves it. He likes it more than in person, like more than door knocking. But it's like whatever works for each person.
Right. Whatever your personality is.
Correct. That's pretty much what it boils down to. If you're a people's person and you could give them a nice smile and that's how you get the
Right.
listing,
Yes.
then that works for you. You could give a smile on the phone and it will be accepted, but not the way that necessarily that you would want.
Right. I mean, I had an agent that worked for me, and I told her to get started that she needed to go and knock on doors, like on FISBOs. And she went and knocked on the door, and she called me hysterical, crying. The man had chased her off his property with a gun. So she went also to cold calling. So it's not for everybody.
Got it.
But it's what you got to do when you start out. You know, you have to get your name out there. And
I know that there was an agent that I heard used to, at the beginning of his career, he would pay people to put signs in his yard. That was his way of getting out there, door knocking, and would pay to put a sign and get
like
his name out there.
for sale sign.
A for sale sign. Let's say the house closed or just sold, or just closed. Basically, get his name out there, put in a sign, and that was how he did it, and it worked out for him.
Yeah.
It worked out. But there's definitely, it's about getting creative and being in front and doing the motions every single day and getting yourself out there and getting more and more exposure, which you told me is really boils down to marketing. So let's say someone that is new in the business, let's say someone for myself, 3 years, or even someone a year into the business, or someone that wants to get into the business. I get calls for people that want to come work for me. And I tell them one thing that we don't give in real estate for the most part is leads. As when you're at your brokerage, most of the time you're not getting a $5 million lead. You're not getting a $2 million listing lead. Tell me if I'm wrong. Maybe I need to come to Compass where they give out free leads. If that's the case, maybe we could do that. But overall, no one gives you leads. A rental here, a rental there.
Right.
Even a small listing or not in your demographics. I gave someone yesterday a lead in North Miami Beach. It's his hometown. It's his territory. He knows it. He would be able to service the client way better. So I sent it to him. I'm not sure if it will pan out or not. I gave him his name, the name, email, and everything. But how do you gain that exposure? What is the most effective marketing that you've found aside from cold calling and door knocking?
I think that for us, what has worked is we do a little bit old school with the modern, right? So I think a lot of agents today are just like, okay, I'm going to be on social media. That's how I'm going to get my name out there. But I think that you also have to do some old school real estate things. I try every so often. I sit down at my office and I write 10 personal cards to people, and I think people really appreciate that, and they remember it too, because otherwise you become like a secret agent, right? Like nobody remembers you, and all of a sudden you run into somebody. That's the worst thing that can happen to us as realtors, right? That we run into somebody and they're like, "Oh, I just bought a house," and you're like,
The worst?
and yes, and you're like, "Oh, I should have. I was thinking about calling them last month and I didn't."
And it's
And
the only person's fault that
is
they
your
bought without you is the agents.
yes, because and back in the day, I made all our agents wear name tags. And I said, you should always have a name tag. And I said, I will never forget. I had a lady that worked at Publix, and she had called a company that I used to work for because she had seen my name at that time. And then I didn't see her. And she looked everywhere for me. And it's because I wore a name tag when I went shopping at Publix. And I sold her house and her sister's house. And then I referred them to an agent in North Carolina, and they each bought a house in North Carolina. And I got the referral for that. So I used to say, you should always wear a name tag. Don't be a secret agent. But I don't wear a name tag anymore.
All right.
But yes, you have to do some old, to answer your question, we send out a magazine. You have to stay in touch with your database. That's super important. Have some kind of communication with your database. And for agents that don't have a database, shame on you.
Go get one.
You better get one. And so when agents come and work for me, I tell them you have to find 200 people. And people are like, I can think of 50. And I'm like, no, if all of a sudden one day you'll think of 5, and then you'll think of 10 more the next day. And you contact those 200 people and say, hey, I got great news. I'm becoming a realtor. I'm looking forward to helping you, your family, your friends, blah, blah, blah. You put them in your database and you stay in touch.
And it's a slow, long game.
Yes.
That's really what it boils down to. With getting yourself out, it's the most effective way. It's interesting that you said the most effective way is sometimes just writing a letter.
Mm-hmm.
That's what last week, I keep referring to previous, just because the information that we're saying, this is unbiased, and we're on the 3rd week, and people are saying the same follow-up, consistency, and making it personal and doing something different. For example, writing the note card. Our last week's guest, he was also saying, I write note cards, I get the listings off market, and that is the way to go. So the consistency, the old school, and getting creative is really what I think keeps you alive in the business and keeps you going.
Yeah, absolutely. Be in people's faces a little bit so that they remember.
Right.
Because otherwise, like we said, then you run into them somewhere and they said, oh, I bought a house.
Fall off the map. Yeah. Biggest deal.
Whew. Well, I mean, we've done some big deals, especially now, right? The market is up, and we sold one around the corner here from you, and we had both sides. So when you're over $4 million and you have both sides, and
it's a sweet deal.
That's a sweet deal. Yeah, that's a good deal. And I mean, listen, I think my very first deal was a young lady that bought a house from me right by where the Dolphins play, and right by the stadium, and she still lives there. And I think that was an $80,000 deal. But I still do the $80,000 deals too. Money, like I said, money is money, and you never know. Those clients will refer you to somebody else, and so
your first deal 20 years ago was 88,000.
Yeah, I think maybe it was just 80,000.
80,000. What do you think you get that client out of the deal for now?
So funny, she just contacted me maybe like a year ago saying the neighborhood was getting rough and she was thinking about moving. And listen, it's still like I would say it's probably like a 350. So it's not,
You didn't come
Yes.
with me like 1.4.
Right. No, that's still, but the problem then is like, where you want to go to a better neighborhood, but
What price are you willing to
right.
pay?
Yes.
Almost something like that. And I remember that you said something about the Dolphins just now that reminded me of a deal. And I'm sure you've had this many times over the last 20 years. There's times where you don't get paid. And last week we spoke to an off-market broker, and in off-market it happens all the time. The seller decides to not sell, or whatever. And there's nothing really in writing. It's kind of verbal. But with you, I know no papers, no showings, no nothing. I know that already. So how many times has it come up that either you haven't got paid by a seller, a buyer, or however it was? How often does that happen in the residential real estate world? I know that you had it once with a large house, and I think you got paid out after years of litigation, something along those lines. But does it happen that often? Does it not happen? Or if it's everyone, most of the time people honor their word and their contract.
Yeah. I think that's the only litigation Jeff and I have really had in 10 years. We had one other one with actually a football player for the Dolphins. That one took like 3 years. And the other one was a big one. And that one, it took, it was with Mushka, yeah, I think Mushka.
Final Green?
Yeah. So it took, I think it took about a year. But one of my very first deals, and this is like I needed to put food on the table for my family. You know how it is in the beginning. And my seller, believe it or not, was $10,000 short at closing. Like he had to come to closing with $10,000. He owed more on the house than what he was getting out.
Oh, wow.
And he couldn't close. So he asked me if I would not take my commission so we could close, and he would just pay me back in 6 months later when he was getting his IRS check or something. And I did. And he did pay me back.
Wow.
But everybody said I was crazy. But sometimes you have to have some faith and humanity at times,
At times you definitely have to. But that's like a massive move to make, especially when you need the money and like you worked hard on the deal. And it's like, okay, I'm putting this up out there, and hopefully I get paid and hopefully it all works out. But there's a big possibility. Did you feel like there was any possibility that you're not going to get paid?
Well, of course. I mean, there was really nothing. It was like a paper signed between him and I that it was like,
But overall, I think in the residential world, for the most part, as long as you did right, there really should not be any problem or any difference. Like there shouldn't be any conversation at the end. I'm not paying you, or I am paying you.
Right.
There shouldn't be anything like that.
No, and listen, I think that when you had called me some time ago, I said to you, the number one thing to learn in real estate is like, you don't want ever your clients to think that your number one concern is your commission, right? Because people can smell that, and it's so off-putting to clients, I think, if they think that you're worried about closing so you can get your commission. That being said, none of us want to work for free, but I think that in all, I think people, if you are straightforward with people, they appreciate that. They appreciate you, and you're going to get paid.
I agree, and that's how it should be. That's how it usually is. So I was driving down Sterling, and I notice that there are a bunch of cows in a big field. So I was wondering, and let's see if you know the answer. I may know the answer. I think I know the answer. But why are there cows on Sterling across from the supermarket in massive acres and acres of land?
Because they will not sell. It's been a thing forever and ever.
Why? But why cows?
They have a farm.
Why did they create a farm on acres in residential areas?
That farm has been there. I think that I came here 35 years ago, and I swear to you, the cows were there.
Do you think the cows had kids, or you think same cows?
Well, I don't think cows turn
35 years old?
I don't think so.
No?
No, this is like a farm. People are running.
So what I heard recently, why there are cows in Sterling Road, Sheridan, every intersection or wherever all these random places is because they, by putting down cows and making it a farm, now it's agricultural.
Yes.
And therefore their taxes and their whatever their carrying costs are slim to nothing. Does that make sense?
Yeah. I mean, that's true. But on the flip side of that, how much money would they get for all that land? And so wouldn't that make up for whatever tax cut you're getting? I don't know. So there's got to be some.
There's got to be
larger
more story.
Yes, than what.
There's got to be more story behind it, and but it's funny. Sometimes people just can't let go, even though they should.
Right.
You saw the famous story, I'm sure. It was out in the news somewhere in, I believe, Vegas or California, Northern California. Developer came and built a town.
A little house, no.
Exactly. Was it California? Northern California? Or was it Australia?
No, it was here, but I don't think it was in California. I thought it was like in Chicago or something. I don't know.
But they built a city, probably with 200 houses, something along those lines. And they own an acre and a half. They got offered, I think, $50 million to walk away, and they didn't.
Right. Listen, there was a very similar situation up on Johnson Street, close to US 1 CVS, where they, that there are those townhomes there on the south side of Johnson. And there's one house sitting there. And he bragged to me how he was holding out and he wasn't going to let the developer buy his house to get the full corner. And he didn't. And they build around him. And then 2 years later, he wants to sell the house. Well, nobody wants to buy that house. Like, you have towering townhomes on either side of you.
You got to know when to let go.
Yeah.
Got to know when to let go. It's sometimes there's no point. Sometimes there's just no point in holding on. And how do you go about, let's say your listing agreements are 6 months to a year. I would say, right?
Yeah.
6 months to a year.
Most of them are 9.
9?
Yeah.
So let's say a seller calls you, and I've had this. Seller calls you 3 months in and is like, I don't want to sell. Could we cancel the contract? And a very civil manner, nothing against you. They had a change of heart. They're having seller's remorse. Maybe they're older. Maybe it got complicated. Maybe if kids coming back. So many things. How do you go about that? Is it like, no, this is a contract, or is there a conversation?
No, I would never hold somebody to a contract. I've had it so many times where people's situation have changed, that maybe they were selling for money reasons, and then something happened. They got a new job or whatever. You don't want to hold somebody to a contract. That's just bad PR for yourself, because they're going to tell somebody who will tell. So
that's what I've seen.
Yeah. So what I ask them, I don't even have like a large percentage. I make them just compensate us for the very first getting on the market cost that we have, photographers and things like that.
Right. Okay. That makes sense. And I figured that. I was having this conversation with a friend a little while ago, and they do real estate in New York. And New York's obviously a whole different animal, but he was very adamant that, or maybe also they were talking multifamily, a little bit of difference, but still 6 months, they give us the 6 months, whether they like it or not. And the sellers, everyone knows that. That's how New York real estate is. Something along those lines.
What are you going to force them to sign a contract?
So in the end of the day, I told them that's not how yes, we have it in writing that we have it for 9 months. That's so that we could get it sold and we could do our job and that we're not wasting our time marketing or anyone else's. At the same time, if someone came over and said for personal reasons, or there's a death, or there's a joy, or whatever may happen, you never really hold them in place.
You just have to make sure that you protect yourself. There's has to be some kind of procuring termination thing in there, that they can't sell it within X amount of time to somebody that you have shown it to. Or
I think I made that mistake on a listing of mine. It was a very complicated deal, whatever. Long story short, it's for sale by owner now. After I brought in my own buyers, 15, 20 people that all kind of wanted the house and never was able to pull together, like so complicated, whatever. Much luck, much success to them. Hopefully it gets sold, and it is what it is.
Yeah. That's always how it is. At the end of the day, that's how we end our day, right? It is what it is.
It is what it is. And you do your best, I think, to take away from today's episode. Real estate's exciting. It's stressful. You have to have your database in place. You need to spend money on marketing, whether you like it or not, and be methodical and do your due diligence. I would say when you walk into a listing, know what you're talking about. Know the exact square footage.
Do your homework.
Do your homework. And really marketing and getting yourself out there, and don't be a secret agent.
Yes.
Did I sum it up?
I think that sounds amazing. Who told you that?
I had a good host. I had a good co-host today. And thank you so much for coming on. I'm happy that we made this happen. We definitely have a lot more to debunk and get into and hear about buyer myths and seller myths and what people say and about why their house is way more special than the one you sold for $1 million more that was 3,000 square feet more. So I'm excited to have another podcast at some point. Thank you so much for making this work. Episode 3, season 1 of The Real Pod. Thank you so much.
Good to be here. Thank you.